What's up, everybody? It's the Jax back with another episode of It's Not Your Program, It's Your Form that's fucking up your results. Today we're talking about why your back isn't growing and how it's probably because of how you're rowing. We're gonna go through some common form mistakes we see on both lat and upper back rows and how to fix it in the Jack way so you can grow some lat wings. Let's get to it. So when it comes to lat rowing, we've talked about this in previous videos, but one of the big mistakes we see is just with overall setup and not setting up according to like your shoulder width, the pull of the machine, etc. So on a machine that were to diverge or pull apart a little bit more, you likely want to go single arm, kind of lean, swivel. Watch my pull down video for a little bit more detailed breakdown on that concept. So with that in mind, on this Cybex row here, this one doesn't diverge quite as much, so this is a decent row if Jack did want to do it two arm. But we're gonna have him go single arm to demonstrate the first big issue we see with rowing, which is getting stuck up in your shoulder. So Jack, let's show them how it's commonly done. So the mistake we see is that Jack is caught up in his shoulder here. This applies to pull downs as well. If you want to train your lat, you need to make sure that you are depressing more with the shoulder, getting that shoulder out of his ears. So he drops it down, he tips to the side a little bit, looks down the side of that gun. Now he's in alignment so that arm is riding tight to his body. It's not pulling off the side, which is another big issue I see. So Jack's depressed at the shoulder. He's thinking about just kind of driving that elbow down towards the hip, which is going to keep him way more locked on lat. The second issue I see, like with pull downs, is just a improper bracing to help adjust where that torso position is to keep you aligned through the motion. So Jack, let's demonstrate what I mean here. So what I'm referring to is as you know, like on pull downs, you see people grabbing their lat. On something like this row, people are just kind of like letting the arm rest down by the side. They don't really have any offhand stability here to help control the position of his torso. Guys, this offhand should not be lazy, okay? What I like to coach people on is find a part of the machine, whether you're counterbalancing yourself, like on the hammer strength row, bracing yourself here, something that allows you to set your torso in a better position to stay locked on that lat. So in this case, Jack is actively pushing with his hand to posture up just a little bit so you can better drop that shoulder, stay in alignment, and slide through that lat. Versus, again, just kind of having like a loose hand or just kind of resting it, where he's rolling out of position. He has nothing to help push him back into position. Brace back up. People don't always understand the fact that like as you come down, this bracing hand here allows this lat to wrap around the rib cage without elevating into his shoulder. Okay, and if he doesn't have that brace, he's gonna let that go and spin. So he has that block, and he creates that same pressure, he's gonna pull himself up so he can slide through. The third issue I see with lat rowing is your elbow spin. So Jack, let's demonstrate what I'm talking about here. What you'll see, this one's so incredibly common, guys. People come through, they think they're getting a really crazy lat stretch by letting that elbow rotate. They torque it back into position. And I mean, yeah, you're gonna get a little bit of back in there. It might even feel like a good stretch and a good contraction. But realistically, what I find is just, it's honestly a lot of wasted energy. Every time you spin that elbow, you're getting off that lat a little bit, you're getting up into your shoulder. So the way to fix this is to, again, it's all about the setup here. Getting that right position, this is gonna make it way easier to maintain. Now Jack is immediately in like a neutral or semi-supinated grip here. And now as he slides, that elbow is gonna ride tight to the body. And as he comes down, he's thinking about just kind of sliding like the bottom part of his hand, that pinky, forward. He's not reaching, pressing, you know, through his pointer finger. He's sliding low and then riding low with a neutral, if not semi-supinated grip. That way that elbow stays on a track the entire time and works that lat a lot better. Another big issue we see with lat rowing is not taking into consideration the movement mechanics of the machine compared to what we need to do to train the lat. So we've already talked about the position you need to be in. Well, what if the machine, if you were improperly set up or the way the machine works doesn't align well with that? So Jack, let's demonstrate here what happens if you're not careful with this machine. So to better illustrate this concept, on this one, this pivots from the bottom here, meaning it works in an arc like this versus something that slides down and through. So if Jack's not careful and he has this maybe set in a little too close, let's move this forward a little bit. when Jack pulls, this isn't able to fully drop through down into his hip yet, so he's kind of staying stuck up in his shoulders. Another issue that I'd see is Jack stand up. So let's say that seat is a little bit too low now, because now you can see Jack is set up to the point where he's going to be staying in that shoulder the entire time because of the way this machine arcs. So if you guys are working with a low pivot arcing machine, you got to make sure you have the proper setup to let that arm, it doesn't need to start low, but it does want to finish low. You don't want to stay stuck up in that shoulder. So compare that to something like the Cybex Eagle row we have, or even the hammer strength row, which kind of pivots from the top of the range of motion. So you can see on this one now, the axis rotation is above Jack here, and that's gonna make it a little bit easier for him to stay set into that shoulder and slide down. It is still possible to have this set up incorrectly, but it's gonna be a little bit harder just because of the nature of that machine. And this is why this is such a highly sought after machine, because it tends to mimic the line of pull of the lats really, really well. So just something for you guys to consider. I've done some videos on it, I'll do more in the future about how different machine mechanics alter your movement mechanics, and therefore alter how you train that muscle, but you can keep that in consideration. And find a gym, if you want to grow a big back, find a gym with some gnarly back equipment. It makes a difference. So we did want to go over now a couple very common lat rowing motions. Number one's gonna be dumbbell row. We'll go over seated cable row here in just a second, and some issues we see on these movements. On the dumbbell row, the biggest issue we see is doing this particular setup where the knee is on the bench and you're rowing up. Guys, a few things wrong with this here right off the bat. Number one, if you have ever used a significant load on this, you're gonna feel the weight of your body and of the load all come compression down on just a couple points of contact here, which is really, really uncomfortable, especially for you bigger, stronger people. So if you're already doing this, we'd recommend standing behind the bench, okay? Now, that position also drives a lot of kind of pulling into the shoulder, which we talked about earlier in this video. So a better setup for this exercise is gonna be setting this bench up to like a 45-ish degree angle and standing behind the bench. Jack, let's demonstrate how we like it done. I like to coach both feet back on this one here. That way you can clear everything out of the way. If you have that like leg in front of you or you're straddling it too much, again, it's easy to get up into that shoulder. So by standing both legs back, you're able to use your body weight a little better to let that weight sit right onto the lat. See how Jack's hanging straight down. We already have some good tension in the lat here. Now, as he starts the rep, he's gonna start kind of in this hinged back position here. He's gonna feel a little bit of stretch in the back side of his body, and he's gonna just slide forward, up and through. So by doing this, guys, we're eliminating pulling in through the shoulder there, running into your hip, you know, all these different variations or issues you see with kind of more of this staggered stance. It's not wrong. I've just found this to be way more effective and honestly a little easier to coach for this dumbbell row variation. So the first common issue I see on seated cable rows is people just pulling kind of through their upper back too much. Now, this machine is a pretty well designed one such that this cable isn't set too high. You'll see some of these benches where he's set pretty low compared to where the cables are pulling from, and that'll cause an alignment basically to pull straight to the upper back. Not wrong, just not gonna be the best lat movement, okay? The second issue I see on seated cable rows is people leaning a little bit too far back, and now as they're pulling, they're gonna be even more into like their upper back and traps. So if you wanna do like an upper back or kind of trap emphasis cable row, this is actually not a bad variation. But you'll see people just kind of like lean forward, they get a decent stretch in the lats, but then they rock really far back, and then they just kind of pull up through it, okay? So as you can see, it's just gonna be a ton in the upper back. So to fix this, two things here. Number one, to fix the first point, we're gonna sit down on an extra pad, you know, or a 45-pound bumper plate, something just to elevate him a little bit more so that his arms are just a little bit lower relative to his torso here. Now he's gonna be stuck more in lat immediately off the bat. See how he just slides with that shoulder centrated. Guys, all the stuff we've already talked about earlier, this is just one of those small setup that leads to good execution things. The second thing he can do to make this a little more lat emphasis is instead of leaning back, stay forward just a little bit as he pulls, he'll just be more likely to slide right to the last. Now, if you are someone who gets stuck up in your shoulder, you can be a little more upright. I also like to cue people to press through their toes as they start the rep a little bit, just to help them kind of like they kind of stretch, press their toes, pop up just a little bit to clear, call it clearing the shoulder, and then slide through the lat. So sometimes a little bit of foot pressure can make a big difference on an exercise as well. Let's move on to some upper back rowing, how to grow, you know, your mid traps, rhomboids, all that good stuff. Now, the first issue we see is people not using chest supported movements for upper back rowing. The big thing you need to do with the upper back is to let that shoulder blade wrap around the rib cage, okay? Create some of this flexion here in the spine, maybe in a little bit. Now, if you're unsupported, you'll be able to kind of get to that position, but it's even more effective if we use a chest pad, and we'll show you why. So Jack, when Jack grabs the bar here, you'll see this pad offers an awesome point of stability for him to almost like sink into. Imagine that chest pad running into his sternum and pushing these shoulder blades around the rib cage. It already just adds the stability, allows these things to move around here a little bit better, which creates a better stretch in these mid-trap, you know, upper back fibers. Because then as you were to row, he could go ahead and just, you know, he's already on the muscle versus being something a little more unstable where he ends up getting off those tissues. The second issue we see with upper back rowing is just short arming the reps. Jack, let's demonstrate it here quick. You guys will see this in commercial gyms all day long. See how Jack's kind of coming down. He's just doing some short, choppy reps. He's staying kind of retracted in these shoulder blades. Remember, like I said in point one, we got to let these shoulder blades wrap around the rib cage and fully retract and extend the arm behind the body. So to fix this, yep, you got to let that shoulder blade go. That's where the chest support comes in. This is where inhaling and letting that weight sink to the bottom comes in as well. So as Jack comes down, he's inhaling through the nose, pushing some air to the back side of his rib cage here to push these shoulder blades around the rib cage. And then as he rows, he's pulling through. And as he rows, he can get a little bit of like a tip up of the chest just to not be stuck up in that shoulder too much. But as he comes down, guys, the key here is to let the shoulder blades go. You got to let them sink. Nice, big, almost exaggerated ranges of motion on this movement. The third issue we see with upper back rowing is just using, honestly, too much momentum, kind of popping that chest off the pad a little bit too much, which isn't necessarily a horrible thing, but like with any other movement, when you use a lot of momentum, Jack, let's demonstrate, you're just not getting fully authentic range of motion, or you're not keeping as much tension on the tissues as you want, one or the other. So as you can see, as Jack lifts his chest up here, especially as he starts to fail, if he's kind of moving a lot through his low back to lift his chest, sometimes we see people getting incomplete retraction here. Exactly. So yes, they are getting some good stretch, and that is going to drive a little bit of a hypertrophy stimulus, but just, again, guys, good form, making sure that tissue stays on the entire time. Like, pop up the chest a little bit maybe. If you want to push with your feet just a little bit, kind of push that chest up. Now slide through. Really think about digging the elbows through, not just leaning and kind of yanking. Think about digging those elbows through at the back. Full shoulder extension, that'll help bring in that upper back fiber. The next issue we see with upper back rowing is going single arm. You can do single arm for rear delts, but for growing like your mid upper back there, you guys need to do this two arm. Jack, go ahead and demonstrate here. So a few problems with going single arm for upper back rowing is, number one, when people do this single arm, this shoulder blade complex is meant to retract together. It's really hard to fully retract your shoulder blade just one at a time. The second thing here, the second reason, is because this single arm kind of steals rotation, or the rotation steals the retraction a little bit. So Jack, see how he's kind of turned here, and as he pulls, it's easy to kind of keep rotating his whole torso with the arm, which doesn't get him as much authentic retraction of that shoulder blade. And the third issue with this is that when he's going single arm, when he's like trying to stabilize with this offhand here, there's still some degree of stability going on with this other shoulder blade. So again, just not allowing the most authentic, range of motion that this was meant to do. So guys, do your, upper back rowing, double arm. If you want to train rear delts, that's actually a good way to do that and avoid some upper back activation is by going single arm. So I get the question a lot, Jack, do I have to go overhand to do upper back, or can I go neutral? And the question, or the answer really depends on the machine or the implement you're working with, because if you're doing something in neutral grip at a 6-set arm close to the body, yeah, that's gonna train a little more lat than something that tends to abduct that arm off the side. Now, if you have a machine like this Body Masters, which is another issue we see with upper back growing, is just choosing the right machine, you'll see that this machine works in an arc. So if Jack goes, pronated here and he pulls around, this machine is forcing him to create an arc. So he's getting, some protraction, he's getting some retraction. He could also go neutral grip here and he'll still be able to train his upper back because it's just the angle of machine, the fact that it works in a rotary motion, which is how that upper back fiber wants to work. It wants to work rotary. It doesn't work as well linearly. Not that you can't get some retraction, but if you really want to train the upper back, get a nice big stretch, let those arms come across, and then wrap them back around the rib cage. And again, a neutral grip here on this machine works just fine. Or like we demonstrated on the cable machine, depending on how you set it up, guys, you can still train, upper back with neutral grip, but just will depend on torso angle, implements, arc of the machine, all of those things. So the final issue we see with upper back growth is just not using the right equipment. I will say people are more likely to be able to get into their upper back than they are to train their lats. So you're likely not having that issue, but something like having this Body Masters machine would make a massive difference in your upper back growth because it just puts you right where you need to be. So that's a wrap on It's Not Your Program, It's Your Form, Fucking Up Your Results, and why you're not growing from your rowing motions. Stay tuned for more videos from Jacked and Lean.